At Option Genius, we believe that you deserve freedom, financial freedom, so that you have no more worries and more than enough money. Time freedom, so that you could do what you want, when you want to do it. And choice freedom, to live your life on your terms. But the system and Wall Street are rigged against us little guys. So how do we fight back? Well, my friend, that's what this podcast is all about. My name is Alan Sama, and this is the Option Genius Podcast. Uh-oh, passive traders, it's back. The annual prediction episode. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Option Genius Podcast. Now, today we're going to be talking about 2020, the next decade, and what's going to happen, or what I think is going to happen. Now, it's called the prediction episode, and I hate predictions, mostly because most of them are, as you know, wrong. And people are pulling stuff out of, well, thin air. But I've done this for the past couple years, and it's been a very, very popular episode. So let's make it a yearly thing. Why not? Let's have some fun, right? Now, keep in mind that this is just my interpretation of things to come. I might be right. I might be wrong. I might be a little bit of both. That's not the point. The point is to hone in on trends, to see what's coming down the pipeline. If you can spot a trend coming before anybody else, you can make a lot of money. Or even if you spot it in enough time to ride the trend, to ride the wave, you can still make a lot of money. And as they say in trading, the trend is your friend. So the trends will probably continue. Actually, I feel so. If you look into anything called trend following, the trend usually stays intact. I forgot the scientist, but it was, a object in motion will tend to stay in motion unless another object of equal energy stands in its path or something like that, right? So if we can identify these trends, especially if they're long-term, if they've been occurring in the past and they're going to continue to keep occurring, then those are the things that we can actually benefit from in a financial sense, right? So for example, the aging population of the United States and around the world, really. More and more people are getting older. The boomer generation is older. That's one trend. And so there are ways to monetize that if you want to. I have a friend who owns several nursing homes. And now they're turning people away. They are at full capacity. They cannot take any more people. And they cannot build those places fast enough. That is the type of trend that's not going to be just a flash in the pan. It's not going to go away in a few months, right? It's not a fad. Those are the trends that I would like to invest in. Those are the ones I want to identify and make money from. And just put your money in and then take advantage of this over and over again, where you don't really have to watch it. You don't have to monitor it. It can be really passive. For example, another friend of mine, he goes down to the city planner's office in the suburbs around Houston, and he looks at the plat maps and he looks at the road construction, what's going to be happening. Where are the roads coming in? Where is the growth happening? And then he goes out and he tries to find pieces of property that are in those areas so that he can buy them before other people see what's happening. So that's what I'm talking about. So before we get into the predictions of 2019, let's take a look back at what I said was going to happen in 2018 and see if I was actually right or if I have egg on my face. So in 2019, I said we are going to be having higher interest rates. Now, this one ended up being wrong. Most economists will agree that rates should have been raised, but they weren't. They were actually cut, right? The Fed and Powell bowed to the power of Trump and cut rates, saying that they did not see any inflation. Now, I guess they don't buy their own groceries because anybody that does can tell you that things cost a lot more than they used to. But now we have Powell making statements. Powell is the Fed chair. He's making statements that rates will be stable for at least half of 2020, which is great for borrowers because that means that they stay super low and credit is cheap. Now, the huge rally that we've had for the last several years in the stock market is due to, in most part, because of the reduction in interest rates. It was a Fed rally. If they stop cutting rates, I don't know what that does to the stock market. Maybe we end up moving sideways or even lower. So I predicted higher rates in 2019, but I was wrong on that one. And so for that reason, the market continued to go higher. Number two, I predicted a recession in 2019. Wrong here too. We actually had decent growth in the economy and a booming financial market. So what happened? Well, central banks around the world all decided to cut rates. They all said, we're going to keep this party going no matter what. And that boosted the economies of many countries. Now, some are still struggling, but here in the U.S., it was enough to keep the growth happening. do we get a recession in 2020? That's the question now, isn't it? A recession is coming. Whether it's in 2020 or beyond, we don't know, but we're going to get one. But since 2020 is an election year, and I believe Trump will do anything he can not to lose, I don't think we'll have a recession in 2020. Or at least it won't be declared until after the election. Now, that might mean cutting taxes for the middle class, or more subsidies for certain industries, or more trade agreements. I don't know. But if you look at Trump's history, he hates to lose, and he will do his best to keep the economy humming until the election. And at this point, a recession might be the only thing that can defeat him. Prediction number 3 was a lower stock market. Man, I was wrong here too. U.S. stock markets were up over 25%. Holy cow. I hope you enjoy the ride because it's not going to happen again in 2020. We're not going to get 25%, that's for sure. Companies did buy back a lot of stock because they were able to borrow money at very low rates. So they borrowed the money, bought back their stock. They kept pushing stock prices higher and higher. Now, I think the markets are still going to be higher in 2020, but not 25% higher. I don't even know if we're going to get double digits. But as long as it keeps moving higher, even by just a little, means that we're going to continue to have all-time record highs. And that's great for headlines. Number 4, more legalized marijuana. Now, I was right on this one. In fact, it would be hard not to. States need cash, and taxing weed is one way to do it. Legalizing sports betting is another, which also seems to be happening, although a little bit slower. One thing that is not happening, though, is people making a killing with weed stocks. 2018 was the year that financial newsletter publishers were hitting us over the head, screaming about how weed stocks are going to make us all billionaires. Well, guess what? Didn't happen. Many weed companies actually went bust or were bought out for pennies on the dollar. Private weed companies are still doing well if they're managed properly, but their problem is that they have to deal in cash for the most part. And until that changes, investing in weed stocks is just going to be a crapshoot. Number 5, real estate prices are going to drop. Home prices actually rose 3.3% in 2019. And although that's lower than the 5% that they rose in 2018, it's still enough to make me wrong on this prediction. But that's good news overall, so I'll be happy to be wrong on this one. As long as rates are low, real estate should slowly appreciate. Once interest rates start to rise, though, sales might slow down, and then as they continue to rise, real estate prices might stall or even decline. It all depends on how fast the rates increase, and if we start seeing greater than expected inflation. So those were all the predictions I made in 2019. In 2018, I said a couple things that are still coming true, which are that the AI, artificial intelligence, will be everywhere, and that China will become more independent. Now, AI is impacting every single job out there, not just the repetitious ones. I mean, computers are doing better jobs right now than doctors at detecting cancer, and even than judges at deciding if a person accused of a crime should be allowed out on bail. So if they can do better jobs than those guys who have been to school, like doctors have been to school for 12, 15 years in order to tell if somebody has cancer or not, if a computer can do it better than them, then the cashier down at Walmart doesn't stand a chance. He's going to be out of a job next week. Your job, whatever it is going to be impacted as well if it has not already. And so I strongly believe that generating income from multiple sources, including trading, is more essential than ever before. And you need to get on this bandwagon. You need to get started now because every day that goes by means more and more and more changes. Also, 10 years ago, China would not even have been able to stand toe-to-toe with the U.S. in a trade battle. Probably not even 5 years ago. But in 2019, they held their ground. Now, we're going to see in 2020 if we get a full trade agreement or not. But make no mistake, China is growing stronger and will soon take over the U.S. as the strongest country in the world, both in the economy, technology, but also in military strength. Now, that might surprise you, and that might be the longest to happen. But with the way that China is buying allies around the world, and we are basically alienating ours, the tables will turn. So, what does the crystal ball show for 2020? Let's go. Number 1, volatility will rise. Now, the 15 to 18 level in the VIX used to be average. Now, the VIX is the gauge of the S&P 500. Basically tells you how volatile the stock market is. The higher the number, the more volatile. Used to be around 15, 18 was average. So if you go above 18, you get to 20, 22, that means, stock's really moving up and down. You go below 15, they're kind of dead. They're not really moving. For the last few years, though, after the Great Recession or towards the end of the recession and ongoing, under 15 has been the norm. But I believe that will change. The effects of the Great Recession are melting away. Inflation is rising, interest rates will eventually rise, and that will make the stock market more choppy. Now, I think this happens in the second half of the year of 2020, and I believe that the election itself, which is in November, will help it along. Now, there are other catalysts that are happening during the year. Maybe Brexit might do something. I don't think it'll affect us that much. Maybe the trade agreement or anything else like that could affect it, but I think the volatility increases on a standard, on a regular or stable basis in the second half of the year closer to the election. Number 2, stocks will drop no matter who becomes president. So they're going to rally slightly during the year, that's the prediction, as long as interest rates are not increasing. But once the election is over, we will see a drop. If Trump comes back, he's going to act more erratic. If a Democrat is elected, that will mean more regulations and a move towards being more eco-friendly. But the election might just mark the end of the bull market. I mean, it's been going on for a long time, several years, I think over a decade now. And I hope that it keeps going, but it has to end eventually. And this is as good a catalyst as any. Number 3, 2020 is going to be the year of the electric car. So Tesla has gone mainstream. Porsche, Volkswagen, Audi, Ford, BMW, Jaguar, and others are already trying to compete with it. And at least 14 more models of cars will be introduced in 2020, electric models, including from GM. They might even have a Hummer, electric Hummer, if you can believe that. It's not rare anymore to see an electric car in most major cities, and they will become more and more commonplace. This has already caused the resale values of luxury cars like BMW, Mercedes, and Lexus to plummet. The next combustion engine car that you buy might just be your last. Number 4, there will be an increase in computer hacking. So as computers and artificial intelligence take away more and more entry-level jobs, that really doesn't leave much for youngsters to do besides goof around on their computers. Now, sure, they could do protests and stage revolutions and all that, but it's kind of easier to learn to become a programmer and way more lucrative to become what's called a black hat hacker. Now, black hat means the evil guy. White hat is the good guy, right? So black hat hackers are the ones that are hacking into different companies, stealing your identity, all that kind of stuff. And we will see more and more companies having data breaches, their information stolen. The election itself is going to have all sorts of fake ads, news releases, fake stories, accusations from unknown sources that are going to be made viral using fake accounts and all that stuff. So it's going to be hard to tell what's real from what's not. It's just going to keep getting worse. And here are some long-term predictions that I have. So these are not just for next year, but for several years from now. Medical expenses will continue to rise in the US until we model the healthcare system in Europe and we offer standard care to everybody. Now, I don't know exactly how that will look like, but the insurance system here is broken. Costs continue to rise, and that is causing more and more people in the U.S. to die earlier. In fact, the U.S. is the only Western country in which the average age of death has actually gone down over the past few years. Most countries, you're living longer. In the U.S., the number is actually going down now. Number 2, recycling will be stopped. Maybe not entirely, but the way that it is portrayed now as a way to protect the environment is going to have to change because, it's not working. Now, for example, you know that you can recycle a plastic bottle, right? Everybody knows that. Oh yeah, don't throw the bottle away, put it in the recycling bin. Yes, great. But did you know that in order to be able to recycle it, that bottle needs to be washed? And it has to have the little plastic ring around the top removed. When you take the top off, there's a little ring that stays around the bottle. If that ring is not removed and it's not washed, when it gets to the recycling plant, that bottle is simply tossed in the garbage. Because recycling is too labor intensive at this time, and so the move towards more natural products and fibers will continue. Stuff that can biodegrade on its own, we're going to start using more of that stuff, less and less plastic, meaning less and less recycling. Number 3, there are going to be more and more refugees streaming across borders due to multiple reasons such as economic hardship, civil wars, flooding, and the lack of basic necessities like food and water. Global warming is going to continue and people are going to keep moving in greater numbers to find a better place to live. Now, this has happened all throughout history. It's going to keep happening. This is going to cause massive upheaval in our current system of countries and borders that we have now. Because when you have so many people moving to a better place, it doesn't matter what that place is called or who's a citizen or who's not. They just want a place to live. So it's going to be harder and harder and harder for have any sense of order. Okay? So we got 4 predictions for next year, 3 for long term, and that's it for me. Actually, I'll give you one more. A personal prediction is that I will be driving my current car until it dies. Which might happen in 2020 because it's already got like 150,000 miles. And when it does, I'll be switching to a Tesla. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, I hope you have an amazing 2020. If I can be of any service to you, please reach out. Let me know what your predictions are. What do you see with your crystal ball? Now, as I said earlier, knowing what trends are happening is a great way to build long-term wealth. So if you see something, please share the information. Remember, may the odds be in your favor, and Happy New Year, folks. All stocks are not created equal. We've analyzed thousands of optionable stocks to find the very best ones to trade options on. Lucky for you, you can just download the list for free. Get it at simonsaysoptions.com/stocks. Again, that's simonsaysoptions.com/stocks.